Leak fixed. She's not listening. She heard you.
Mom likes him. I don't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows? She's used to disappointment.
You can't help me.
Listen to your mother, Nick.
You definitely can't help me.
Glad you moved in?
You can't do shit.
Oh, it's my weekend.
Fine, Dad. Force me.
You're a teacher or something, right?
What is London trying to teach us here? We're all building a family.
You said you were a teacher.
I was. Still am, sir.
What'd you even teach?
English lit. How not to die. Okay, all of us. The dog is nature.
This is its course correction.
But nature, well, nature always wins. Nature always wins.
The death of Travis Minara in Fear the Walking Dead came as a huge shock in the show, and it felt so tragic as they developed this character and he became so likeable, and he died so quickly. It left so many unanswered questions which 7 years later still haven't been answered, and this is why I believe this was such a huge mistake for the spin-off show. Now, Travis is a great character for many reasons. He starts off as your typical stepdad, trying to win the approval of his partner's kids, while simultaneously being despised by his own. This is a pretty cliche scenario within TV, and during season 1, he is portrayed to be this guy who is doing everything in his power to cling on to the last bit of humanity for as long as possible. And during season 1, he wasn't the most popular character within the show amongst the fan base. But controversially, I quite liked him season 1. I thought he was a good character. He was a little bit bland. However, he was a character that people looked to for reason, and he provided a bit of stability to the chaos going on in the world around them. Season 1 Travis is a level-headed, calculated man who assesses the best option for himself and his family. And this is something I really like about the early seasons of Fear the Walking Dead. They threw Travis's real family and Madison and Alicia and Nick all into one dysfunctional family, along with Ophelia and Daniel and Strand. And in this big, large, dysfunctional family that they end up traveling on the boat with, you know, it's not all sunshine and roses. They're in an apocalyptic world where everyone is looking out for themselves. And I feel like Travis is the last person to really grasp the idea of we can all work together and we all need to survive. Season 1 Travis is a good character. He's very morally sound. He hasn't lost his humanity yet, and he is doing everything in his power to keep the group as humane as possible. He is clinging on to the last clutches of civilization. And he's also very vocal, and he fully believes at the start that civilization will bounce back, and this is just a blip in the road. In the early seasons, we see Travis develop from this moral pacifist into a true survivor who will stop at nothing to keep the ones he loves safe. Now, I could go on forever about how annoying his son Chris is, and I was so happy when they killed him off. Man, I hated that character. But anyway, the way the show deals with this death and how it affects Travis feels really real and believable. And the fact he beats himself up for the death of his son and has to deal with the grief of his last words to his son being, "God damn you, Chris," is really personal. And in Fear the Walking Dead, he was starting to become this Rick Grimes-like figure within the group, a person they looked to lead the group who would make rational and wise decisions. And he was becoming a real savage in this world, you know, a real force to be reckoned with, as we saw at the military base. Now, later on in the video, I'm going to go over why the writers had to kill him off within the show. And I'm also going to talk about what I would have done if they didn't have to kill him off. I think the writers did an amazing job in developing Travis as a character, and he becomes kind of this really likeable spearhead of the group who you were really rooting for at the end. And towards the end of season 2, he became my second favourite character behind the absolute GOAT that is Nick Clark. I think the death of Chris really changes Travis's mindset. Chris was always this lone wolf who had this egotistical killing streak within him, and he was almost had this like psychopath kind of vibe while he was on the Abigail. That always came across as a bit cringy to me, but we see this kind of cold streak separate him and Travis from the main group, and at first they look like they're finally starting to connect and see eye to eye. But then Chris stumbles upon Brandon and his crew, and he goes back to this old way of senseless killing and ruthlessness, which Travis isn't ready to accept yet, as he's still clinging on to that last bit of morality that he has. And he breaks his promise that he made to Chris's mum, and he eventually leaves Chris with Brandon which ultimately kills him not even 24 hours later. And he blames himself for Chris's death. And this is where we start to see Travis mold into this character who's ready to take on the post-apocalyptic planet. And his failure to keep Chris safe then turns into this desire to keep Madison and her kids safe. And after Travis goes sicko mode, sorry I had to, but when he sees red and he kills Brandon and his friend, I thought he was going to become the spearhead of this show, that, a real leader in the group, and kind of like the Rick Grimes character of Fear the Walking Dead. Now, the show didn't actually intend on killing the character of Travis so early on. However, the actor Chris Curtis decided to leave in order to star in James Cameron's Avatar. So the writers were left in a bit of a tricky position. And this is where I really sympathise with the writers, as they had done such a good job of moulding this character into an iconic figure within the show. Then all of a sudden, Chris Curtis wants to leave and they have to kill him off kind of unexpectedly. However, the way Travis dies might be one of the worst deaths in the whole Walking Dead franchise. When this death happened, a lot of people within the fan base thought Travis could still be alive. And to those people, I want whatever you were smoking on back then, because how on earth people thought this guy was still alive is beyond me. I mean, he got shot in the neck, had his stomach sliced open, and fell out of a helicopter. I mean, not even Rick Grimes is going to survive that. I mean, come on. But when it comes to the character's death, I think it was done very poorly. First of all, the death is in a cold open to an episode, which is just crazy. But the death felt so rushed and a bit pointless. It was like the characters bring up his death twice after it happens, and then the only character who seems to care at all is Madison. Like, everyone else kind of just forgets about Travis, even though he was a main character for the first 2 seasons of the show. Like, this death is meant to be pretty monumentous in the show, and everyone kind of just forgets about him. I think it's such a shame to have an episode, just the episode before his death, showing how much of a beast Travis had become, with him killing all those walkers in the pit and attacking the soldiers in order to save Nick and his girlfriend, just showing how much he's willing to do to protect the people he loves. Just to have him die in a helicopter at the start of the next episode. And I know this is a common trait within the Walking Dead universe, where if a main character is about to die, we normally get a whole episode dedicated to them as a kind of send-off. And this is exactly when I would have killed Travis. In this episode, I would have had a soldier kill him at the army base, maybe Troy's right-hand man, I can't remember his name, but the blonde one who got pulled into the air vent by the zombies, which was kind of unrealistic. But anyway, I would have a soldier kill him, anyone but Troy, as if Troy killed Travis. I don't think we get the interesting character dynamics between him and Nick, and also him and Madison, as I feel like Troy killing Travis would result directly in his death by one of the main characters. But I think if Travis died in this altercation, it would have been such a heroic send-off for the character. Another way I would have done it is maybe by having Travis make it alive to the ranch and having dialogue with Madison and Jeremiah Otto for a bit, and then maybe when he's talking to Jeremiah, he gets sniped through his chest by Walker in the distance, as this still portrays the threat of Walker the same way it came across in the helicopter. But this also allows him to have a last bit of dialogue with Nick and Madison and Alicia and have a proper goodbye, so he could survive for maybe 10 to 15 seconds where he says something to them all and then he dies, and then they have to kill him before he turns. And it would just make it a lot more emotional, rather than him kind of bleeding and then falling out of a helicopter and then we never see him again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's still emotional, but I think this would just, tug on the heartstrings even more. And it also does the same job as his helicopter death by introducing the threat that Walker and his associates are. But in my opinion, the best way of killing off Travis is if they got Cliff Curtis to stay for the entirety of season 3 and they'd killed him off at that dam scene, instead of having Nick, who ends up sacrificing himself, but not really because he survives, have Travis sacrifice himself at the dam and actually blow it up and kill everyone in the dam, and have Madison and Strand and the kids survive and get away in that escape boat, and have Travis, have an emotional send-off on the dam and just blow it all up and put an end to that season. with that big send-off for Travis, and he can also have a very emotional speech to the kids, you know, and Madison saying goodbye. And I think that just would have been the best way of killing off Travis. I think the unexplored potential of the character of Travis is one of the biggest what-ifs in Fear the Walking Dead. And it's such a shame they had to write Cliff Curtis out of the show so early on, just as Travis was starting to become such a beloved character. And it would have been really interesting seeing him throughout the course of the show. And it makes me wonder, was he initially going to be that Rick Grimes figure within Fear? Another interesting thought is, before Dave Erickson got fired as the showrunner, he planned on turning Madison into the villain of the show. So it would have been really interesting seeing Madison and Travis interact and clash if that had have happened. But that's a whole other video idea I'll make in the future, as Dave Erickson planned there to be 7 seasons, and most of what happened after season 3, well, all of it is not what Dave Erickson wanted, but I'll explain that in another video. So thanks for watching this video on Travis's potential, and I'll see you next time.